I guess it makes money for somebody. Questions anymore?
Are the men in black, do you think the men in black are human or inhuman?
Are they human?
Yeah.
Good question, because we're still debating that one. It appears that there are some that are not human. I don't know how much that's been blown out of proportion. I mean, Keel wrote about that, the ancient phenomenon. There are men in black that have shown up that look like dead people who are really tall and pale. And, I think they probably have been blown out of proportion more to hide the fact that some of the men in black are indeed human, and we're going after UFO witnesses, and particularly UFO researchers who didn't believe in the extraterrestrial thesis. And there's lots of clues that they were actually involved with the ex-Nazis, the kinds of license plates they had. They had the XX license plate. The XX group was the British intelligence group that was turning Nazi spies and forcing them to spy for us. And the US government had the 2X group, or the X2 group, which did the same thing. And it's kind of odd that they would use that on license plates, so you don't know if that was a setup by some other government, maybe the Russians, who were trying to point the direct point at the British, who claimed that the men in black were British or American. You just don't know. It's still pretty convoluted. But clearly some of them are terrestrial and some aren't. I just think that the ones that aren't are so ephemeral, so temporarily existing, that for them to actually engage in involved physical interaction with other people is very unlikely. I think you might see one, like you might see Mothman. It might come from another dimension, but you're not going to have a long interaction with Mothman or an ultra-terrestrial, I don't think. Got I don't know, 5 more minutes or something? So we can take a couple more questions. Ted, you had a question?
Yes. Well, I can clarify. Before I talked to Andrew Colvin, who worked at Fortean, and he said that one of the experiments that they were working on was ability to by injection, deliberately inducing cancer in people as an assassination weapon. And Olson was directly involved with that because he was flat out mouth source. So the technology is there, and it's only likely that if they had that more well developed today. So just in just to support your thesis about the induction of cancer, it's pretty much out there.
Yeah, Ted's basically saying that the cancer injection method is stood up to a lot of different researchers looking into it, and there really is something there, and it's been around for a long time. It's a very creepy idea, and it's not above board kind of activity, and I don't think anybody should, support it, and we should try to point it out. But it's hard to ever say. Cancer is just one of those things that a lot of people get it, and you can't prove it. I mean, it's really didn't the 911 guys? Oh, sorry about that. The 911 workers, a lot of them are getting cancer, and the government's saying, well, you can't prove where your cancer comes from, so we're not going to cover you. And that makes it a handy assassination tool. I think Jack Ruby claimed that he claimed that he had been killed that way. So the JFK thing does tie into UFOs, by the way. There's some cases that I could cite, but I won't go there, but it definitely does tie in, and they may have been using that on some of the UFO researchers and witnesses that were giving them trouble. It's a very odd connection, but it's a real thing, and it's the kind of thing that's more and more becoming accepted in the conspiracy world. I don't know about the UFO world. They're still looking at extraterrestrials and wanting to believe that it's all coming from outer space. Even this comet Elenin thing, where the comet is supposedly coming buy, that could be faked or synthetically created. I think they probably, if they had fake meteors back in the 50s, they probably have them now that can fly outside of the atmosphere and look like they're coming in as comets. And this would be what Werner von Braun predicted. He predicted that asteroid attack would be the last big terror weapon. You know, I think it was what was the sequence of things he predicted? One was alien attack. Do you remember? I know the last one was asteroid attack.
Well, last one was aliens, asteroid.
No, I think asteroids was last. Yeah. So they've been using the alien attack one for a long time. What?
It was like Cold War, and then the next one was terrorism.
Terrorism, yeah, just rogue terrorism from Muslim countries. And, you know, in Europe in 2009, only 1% of the terror came from Muslims. So it's just not even. Muslims aren't really doing all that much terror. We had that Norway thing where you had a blonde guy do terror, and there was a UFO connected to that event. If you'll recall, there was a UFO seen over the building that exploded, and I don't know what that means exactly, but I think we all need to just try to think differently about. As Alan said, you know, the people that are into this subject do try to think outside the box. You just don't want to get locked in the box of believing in aliens, because there's way more to this than that. One more question? Was there a question? I didn't hear it. No? A Crowley question? The question is, am I ever surprised by false flag attacks? And probably half the people in here don't even know what a false flag attack is. Well, somebody was just telling me that somebody dressed up like Indians and attacks. Was that you, Ted? What was that story again? That's a good one.
The Mothman Fest massacre, where Mormons dressed up as Indians and slaughtered a bunch of pilgrims heading west. And
So Mormons killed some. Mormons dressed up as Indians and did some massacre. Pardon if there's any Mormons in the crowd. You know, there's rogue, I guess, if you want to call them rogue people in every religion that do things. But that's a false flag attack where you make it seem like somebody else did whatever it is that was done. And I think a lot of the things that happen today are those, probably. The forms of mass control, or whatever you want to call it, are very sophisticated. And there's that nice idea that, I'm trying to remember who said this. They set up two. It may have been Greg. They set up one possibility, another possibility that seems opposite, and then at some point there's a connection that both of them. There's an idea that both of them have that you can isolate out and say, well, that must be the truth, and it really isn't at all. But because you've gone through this thing, it's almost a pyramid shape. You go from one to the other, you know, Marlboro or Camel, Ford or Chevy, and then you know you find something that's a little bit of both or something, and then you think you know you're on to the answer. That's you got to just kind of have to think three-dimensionally, I think, and break out of that and start seeing multiple options for why things happen, including, you know, UFOs and even Mothman. I can't say that I you know, anyone has the answer on exactly what Mothman is. He could be a Garuda. He could be a Thunderbird. Could be both. Thunderbirds are a little different than the Garudas. Some cultures, depending on how they're set up, might view them as more of a threat or scary. I mean, certainly scary, but as I've said before, anything valuable often does seem scary at first. Any kind of step you take that's going to lead you to a better place, even if you're doing a workout regime and you hit that plateau where you can't move on to the next level, that can be very scary because you think, you know, I'm going to fail or I'm going to lose. And you just got to keep pushing through until you get to the next level. We have time for one more? Maybe? Anybody got one more?
What's the connection? Is there any connection with Crowley? Have you brought that up?
Crowley. Well, Crowley's.
I know he, a long time ago, drew a picture of what looked like a gray alien.
Yeah.
Before anybody ever really talked about it.
Yeah.
Kind of intriguing.
Yeah. Crowley, Aleister Crowley, who may be Barbara Bush's father. A lot of people believe that. The great British spy, who was also an occultist, did draw supposedly the gray alien face in 19-something, early, when was that, the 20s? Before that even, 1916? 1914, and then he's been credited with somehow stimulating the whole ET thing. But you have to ask, why would, if there really are extraterrestrials, why would they be responding to one guy? It doesn't make sense. So, but because he was a British spy and had, which they have a lot of influence on our spy network. Maybe he came up with the idea to use the ET hypothesis, because he was still alive when it all kicked off, and maybe as he was, you know, in his last year or whatever, he said, we really should do this, you know, because as these saucers get developed, people are going to see them and going to wonder, you know, it's going to be obvious, you know, that we're developing a secret weapon. So let's come up with a great idea to keep people from, you know, realizing it. But it actually goes back further, I think, because I just found out that Ben Franklin had a ring of British spies that were working for him, and they were called the Nine Sisters Lodge. Right? He was a big Mason, and he did come around this area. He actually went to Franklin actually went to Marietta, and what do you call it when they sanctify the lodge? Whatever. Yeah, he did a ritual there. They have a mound. They have a graveyard around the mound there, and Franklin came to consecrate it. And I think that the Nine Sisters Lodge may have morphed into the Nine. You know, the Star Trek Nine, and that whole idea. Because there's this Nine cult that's been around for a long time and influencing UFO witnesses and researchers. So I think it probably goes back to the 1700s, actually, when they decided to start speaking to beings that were orbiting the Earth in different ways. So that's it. Thanks a lot. I see Susan's here. She's up next, Susan Shepard. So I'm sure she'll have some good stuff for you.